Hey everyone, Britt Albert here. If this is your first time here, I am a spiritual life coach. It's my goal for this channel to help you overcome the obstacles that are standing in the way of you living your best and most authentic life. In today's video, we're continuing on with our Conversations with God series. If this is the first time that you've ever seen a Conversations with God video, this is a little bit how they play out. After this intro, you're going to hear a clip from the actual audiobook of the first book, Conversations with God. The reason that I want you to listen to the clip first is because I want you to hear this message for yourself and decide for yourself what you believe resonates best for you, essentially what your truth is in what you hear in this message. And it's going to be different for everybody depending on where you're at in life. So at the end of that clip is when I give my take, my perspective. And the reason I separate the two instead of just telling you what I think that chapter of the book is because, again, I want you to trust your own intuition and I want you to decide for yourself what resonates for you. And then you can hear my perspective, and if it aligns with yours, great. And if not, that's okay. It's just a different perspective. And it was my take, my personal filter on what I got out of that message personally. So without further ado, I give you Conversations with God.
There is a way to be happy in relationships, and that is to use relationships for their intended purpose, not the purpose you have designed. Relationships are constantly challenging, constantly calling you to create, express, and experience higher and higher aspects of yourself, grander and grander visions of yourself, ever more magnificent versions of yourself. Nowhere can you do this more immediately, impactfully, and immaculately than in relationships. In fact, without relationships, you cannot do it at all. It is only through your relationship with other people, places, and events that you can even exist as a knowable quantity, as an identifiable something in the universe. Remember, absent everything else, you are not. You only are what you are relative to another thing that is not. That is how it is in the world of the relative, as opposed to the world of the absolute, where I reside. Once you clearly understand this, once you deeply grasp it, then you intuitively bless each and every experience, all human encounter, and especially personal human relationships, for you see them as constructive in the highest sense. You see that they can be used, must be used, are being used, whether you want them to be or not, to construct who you really are. That construction can be a magnificent creation of your own conscious design, or a strictly happenstance configuration. You can choose to be a person who has resulted simply from what has happened, or from what you've chosen to be and do about what has happened. It is in the latter form that creation of self becomes conscious. It is in the second experience that self becomes realized. Bless, therefore, every relationship and hold each as special and formative of who you are and now choose to be. Now, your inquiry has to do with individual human relationships of the romantic sort, and I understand that. So let me address myself specifically and at length to human love relationships, these things which continue to give you such trouble. When human love relationships fail, relationships never truly fail except in the strictly human sense that they did not produce what you want. They fail because they were entered into for the wrong reason. Wrong, of course, is a relative term, meaning something measured against that which is right, whatever that is. It would be more accurate in your own language to say relationships fail, change, most often when they are entered into for reasons not wholly beneficial or conducive to their survival. Most people enter into relationships with an eye toward what they can get out of them, rather than what they can put into them. The purpose of a relationship is to decide what part of yourself you'd like to see show up, not what part of another you can capture and hold. There can be only one purpose for relationships, and for all of life, to be and to decide who you really are. It is very romantic to say that you were nothing until that special other came along, but it's not true. Worse, it puts an incredible pressure on the other to be all sorts of things he or she is not. Not wanting to let you down, they try very hard to be and do these things until they cannot anymore. They can no longer complete your picture of them. They can no longer fill the roles to which they have been assigned. Resentment builds, anger follows. Finally, in order to save themselves and the relationship, these special others begin to reclaim their real selves, acting more in accordance with who they really are. It is about this time that you say they've really changed. It's very romantic to say that now that your special other has entered your life, you feel complete. Yet the purpose of relationship is not to have another who might complete you, but to have another with whom you might share your completeness. This is both the mystery and the wonder, the frustration and the joy of the human experience. It requires deep understanding and total willingness to live within this paradox in a way which makes sense. I observe that very few people do. Most of you enter your relationship-forming years ripe with anticipation, full of sexual energy, a wide-open heart, and a joyful, if eager, soul. Somewhere between 40 and 60, and for most it is sooner rather than later, you've given up on your grandest dream, set aside your highest hope, and settled for your lowest expectation, or nothing at all. The problem is so basic, so simple, and yet so tragically misunderstood. Your grandest dream, your highest idea, and your fondest hope has had to do with your beloved other, rather than your beloved self. The test of your relationships has had to do with how well the other lived up to your ideas, and how well you saw yourself living up to his or hers. Yet the only true test has to do with how well you live up to yours. Relationships are sacred because they provide life's grandest opportunity, indeed, its only opportunity, to create and produce the experience of your highest conceptualization of self. Relationships fail when you see them as life's grandest opportunity to create and produce the experience of your highest conceptualization of another. Let each person in relationship worry about self. What self is being, doing, and having? What self is wanting, asking, giving? What self is seeking, creating, experiencing? And all relationships would magnificently serve their purpose and their participants. Let each person in relationship worry not about the other, but only about self. This seems a strange teaching, for you've been told that in the highest form of relationship, one worries only about the other. Yet I tell you this, your focus upon the other, your obsession with the other, is what causes relationships to fail. What is the other being? What is the other doing? What is the other having? What is the other saying, wanting, demanding? What is the other thinking, expecting, planning? The master understands that it doesn't matter what the other is being, doing, having, saying, wanting, demanding. It doesn't matter what the other is thinking, expecting, planning. It only matters what you are being in relationship to that. The most loving person is the person who is self-centered.
That is a radical teaching.
Not if you look at it carefully. If you cannot love yourself, you cannot love another. Many people make the mistake of seeking love of self through love of another. Of course, they don't realize they are doing this. It's not a conscious effort. It's what's going on in the mind, deep in the mind, in what you call the subconscious. They think, if I can just love others, they will love me, then I will be lovable, and I can love me. The reverse of this is that so many people hate themselves because they feel there is not another who loves them. This is a sickness. It's when people are truly lovesick, because the truth is, other people do love them, but it doesn't matter. No matter how many people profess their love for them, it's not enough. First, they don't believe you. They think you are trying to manipulate them, trying to get something. How could you love them for who they truly are? No, there must be some mistake. You must want something. Now, what do you want? They sit around trying to figure out how anyone could actually love them, so they don't believe you and embark on a campaign to make you prove it. You have to prove that you love them. To do this, they may ask you to start altering your behavior. Second, if they finally come to a place where they can believe you love them, they begin at once to worry about how long they can keep your love. So in order to hold on to your love, they start altering their behavior. Thus, two people literally lose themselves in a relationship. They get into the relationship hoping to find themselves, and they lose themselves instead. This losing of the self in a relationship is what causes most of the bitterness in such couplings. Two people join together in a partnership, hoping that the whole will be greater than the sum of the parts, only to find that it's less. They feel less than when they were single, less capable, less able, less exciting, less attractive, less joyful, less content. This is because they are less. They've given up most of who they are in order to be and to stay in their relationship. Relationships were never meant to be this way, yet this is how they are experienced by more people than you could ever know.
Why? Why?
It's because people have lost touch with, if they ever were in touch with, the purpose of relationships. When you lose sight of each other as sacred souls on a sacred journey, then you cannot see the purpose, the reason behind all relationships. The soul has come to the body, and the body to life, for the purpose of evolution. You are evolving, you are becoming, and you are using your relationship with everything to decide what you are becoming. This is the job you came here to do. This is the joy of creating self, of knowing self, of becoming consciously what you wish to be. It is what is meant by being self-conscious. You have brought yourself to the relative world so that you might have the tools with which to know and experience who you really are. Who you are is who you create yourself to be in relationship to all the rest of it. Your personal relationships are the most important elements in this process. Your personal relationships are therefore holy ground. They have virtually nothing to do with the other, yet because they involve another, they have everything to do with the other. This is the divine dichotomy. This is the closed circle. So it is not such a radical teaching to say, "Blessed are the self-centered, for they shall know God." It might not be a bad goal in your life to know the highest part of yourself and to stay centered in that. Your first relationship, therefore, must be with yourself. You must first learn to honor and cherish and love yourself.
What did you think? So this relationship topic actually is going to kind of have a part 2, but the part 2 is going to focus on when relationships are rocky, when they're challenging. So the one thing that I love about this, and I've told people time and time again, my clients, my friends, the way that as a society we have been raised or thought to look at marriage or relationships is that that person completes you, right? We call them our better half, or we say that what our strengths are, their weaknesses are, or what our weaknesses are, their strengths are. And so together it's like this puzzle piece. So we're always looking for our soulmates, or we're looking for our twin flames, or we're looking for Mr. Right or Mrs. Right or true love. But in reality, you have to love yourself. You are Mr. Right or Mrs. Right. You are your true love. when you're in a relationship, there are two people, unless you're polyamorous, who are whole individually. When you're in this relationship with this person, you're not choosing to change who you are to abide by the way they were raised, or the way that they think things are, the way that they think the world works. You're not choosing to let go of your identity and be subservient to their desires. That's not a healthy relationship. That's not the way that relationships were intended to be. It's two people who are on their own individual journeys, who are choosing to bear witness to each other's growth, to be each other's cheerleader, to be the support that each other needs, to remind each other of who you truly are, so that when you have a relationship with somebody and you're having days where you're down, that they can remind you of your greatness. They can remind you of your strengths. They can remind you of successes that you had that you might be forgetting in this moment. And same thing, if they're having a down day or they're having a rough time, you know who they are. You love them where they're at. You don't ask them to be what you expect of them, because there's no expectation of what they are, who they are, or how they make you feel. Your happiness does not come from them. Your fulfillment does not come from them. In my previous marriage, we saw a counselor at the end of our marriage, and I remember this counselor telling me that women in particular, when you're just talking about a regular heterosexual relationship, that women gain their confidence from their husbands. And to me at the time, I was in agreement with this, and I was like, yes. So therefore, my lack of confidence comes from my husband. He's not giving me enough. He's not investing in me. He's not building me up. He's not speaking my love language, right? And when we're in relationships, love languages, they're amazing, because it's like a way that it's like translating that person. If you don't speak the same love language as your partner, it's a way that you can understand them and you can give to them based upon what their primary love language is. That does not mean it's your responsibility to fill their love tank. It is not. It is not their responsibility to fill your love tank. It is your responsibility to love yourself. And when you love yourself, you can love them. You can love your kids. You can love your friends. You'll only ever be able to give and receive love at the level at which you love yourself. So if you're watching this and you're saying, well, shit, I don't love myself, that's where you start. Before you get out there, before you find a relationship, before you continue to search for that person that you feel is going to make you whole, because they never will, you start to do the internal work. You start to be honest with yourself. You start to own those things about yourself that you don't necessarily like. You start to own the lies. You start to own the manipulation. You start to own what you would call a weakness or whatever that is. But you don't own it in a way that's beating yourself up. You're just taking accountability and responsibility for it. Then you forgive yourself for it. And then you're honest with yourself about why did I do these things? So say, for example, you're somebody who you're clingy and you push people away, or you feel that you push people away, or relationships fail because you are too needy or too clingy, that you're entering into this person's space and you're siphoning their energy because you don't know how to create your own. You don't know how to have your own self-sustaining well of love and energy for yourself, and you're pulling from this person and not giving anything back. So how would you handle it in that situation when you're healing yourself? First, you have self-awareness. I am aware that I do this. Then you speak your truth. And this is where some people will differ, and they will say, you're not supposed to say mean things to yourself. You're not supposed to beat yourself up. And that is true. We're not going to live there though, okay? We're speaking the unspeakable. We're saying the things that we don't want to say, but we're thinking on a daily basis every time we look in the mirror. Because just because you don't say it doesn't mean you don't think it. And if it's there, it needs to come out. So once you've had that self-awareness, once you've acknowledged whatever it is that you deem is your fault or that you're bad or whatever, you're making these judgments on yourself. You own that, and then you speak all of your truth out loud. By yourself. It doesn't have to be with somebody. Go out into nature, tell a tree. Like, I know you might laugh, but it's really healing and it's really freeing to speak the unspeakable. You speak the things that should not be spoken. You're not going to manifest them. You're already thinking about them. So speaking them is not going to speak them into existence. That works in its own way, because you're already manifesting these relationships failing over and over again because you're fixating on it internally. So it's like when you have food poisoning and you've eaten something bad, your body vomits it up. It's that word vomit. Just get it out. Get it all out with no judgment. Then we'll clean up the belief systems later, okay? We'll clean up all of that later, but you gotta get it out and speak the unspeakable. Once you've spoken the unspeakable and there's nothing left and you feel empty, you search yourself again. Is there anything else that I'm judging myself for? Is there anything else that I feel bad about myself for? Is there anything else that tells me I'm a bad person, or insert this blank? And once you come up with nothing, there's nothing left, then you go back and you look over all of the things that you vomited up. And it doesn't matter if you remember everything exactly the way you said it, because the intention is healing. So you don't have to go back and say, oh shoot, what was the first thing that I said? I don't remember. Crap, now I can't heal that because I can't, it doesn't work that way. You get it out first. Then whatever you can remember of what you said, you forgive yourself for. I forgive myself for having pushed people away, but that's still judgment. So I forgive myself for having judged myself as wrong for having pushed those people away. So we're forgiving the judgments. I forgive myself for having judged myself as a bad person for having pushed those people away. I forgive myself for having judged myself as weak. I forgive myself for having judged myself as pathetic. I forgive myself for having judged myself as unworthy. Whatever your truth is, you forgive yourself for having judged yourself as blank. Then you move into forgiving the belief systems. I forgive myself for having bought into the belief that there was anything wrong with me needing to pull energy from those people. We're not living there anymore. But we've got to heal it. We've got to accept ourselves. We were the way we were for a reason. And it's not to live in victim mode. And it's not to give us the excuse to hurt other people and say, well, I was hurt, so therefore I behaved like a brat. But we own it. And we understand, why did I behave like a brat? Because I was scared, because I was hurt, because I'd been rejected, because all of these things. And in that, it's not justifying it, because we're not saying that the actions were okay. That would be justifying. If you were to see the why and say, what I did is okay because this, that's justification. What we're doing, what's different, is we're taking ownership. We're taking accountability, we're taking responsibility, and we are loving ourselves through it. I love you, self. I understand why you did what you did. We're not going to do that again, but I forgive myself for having judged myself as wrong for doing that. I forgive myself for having bought into the belief that there was anything wrong with that to begin with. I forgive myself for having bought into the belief that I was supposed to have all of the answers when I was already hurt and scared. I forgive myself for having bought into the belief that I was broken. And you start to say all of these things that are coming up about the beliefs. You've spoken the unspeakable. You cleaned up the judgments. Now we clean up the beliefs. And then after that, it's a slow process, but we start to regain trust in ourselves. And we give ourselves permission to do the things that we love or that we used to love or whatever's calling us in the moment. And that might mean that you have a desire to listen to music that you listened to when you were 16 years old. That might mean that you have the desire to dress the way that you dressed when you were 12. It doesn't mean you're gonna live there. It just means that you're honoring these parts of you that are coming up and they're asking to have these experiences and they're asking to be healed. Once you've done that work and the wholeness is coming from within you, and there's no longer a need to latch out at other people and siphon their energy because you couldn't give it to yourself. Now you're in love with yourself. Now you're full of joy. Now you have your own self-sustaining well. So the right person who is really more somebody who's aligned vibrationally with where you're at, they're going to be a healthy individual. You're a healthy individual. Now you can come together and have a successful relationship because you're not going to try to change them. They're not going to try to change you. The expectations of, whatever a normal relationship is, they're not black and white, cut and dry. That's not what this is about. It's you're on your journey of growth and evolution. Your partner's on their journey of growth and evolution. You're both finding yourselves. You're both having these experiences, and you're just choosing to walk this path and bear witness to each other. And that might mean it's temporary partnership, or it might mean it's for the rest of your lifetime here. Either way, there's no wrong answer because that's not the way that relationships were set up to be. We have all of these expectations that came from different political systems, different reasons why things are the way they are now. If you go back in history, hundreds of years ago, 1,000 years ago, relationships weren't this way. They became this way because of agriculture. They became this way because of societal structures and classes of people. It wasn't always this way. It became business agreements. That's not the way that relationships were designed nor created. So the next time that somebody says that they're looking for their perfect match or they're looking for the person who's going to complete them, now you know in the back of your mind that that's not what relationships are at all. And in fact, you should probably run the other way because that's a codependent relationship. It's going to hurt when that relationship fails because you're putting all of you into them, all of your insecurities. You're giving them to hold, and it's not their burden to carry, and vice versa. If you take on all their insecurities, it's not your burden to carry. You're not a puzzle piece. You are not missing or lacking anything. You can have these experiences where you co-create together and you make decisions together and you have grander experiences than you could have on your own. Still doesn't mean you're lacking anything because you can have that experience without having a relationship. You can have that experience other ways with friendships or living communally. But choosing to have it in a relationship form is a choice to experience that life with somebody, and you're both already whole. I hope that this resonated with you. Let me know below if this gave you a different perspective on relationships that you've ever had before. I love you guys so much. Thank you for being here. And if this is your first time here, if this video resonated with you, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and help us to continue to grow this community. And if there's somebody that you have in the back of your mind that needs to hear this message, whoever it was that just popped in right there, send this video to them and make their day. Help them grow as well, because we're all in this together, you guys. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I will see you guys next time.